Welcome back to Bleav in Softball. I'm your host, Jenna, and I am coming to you from OKC, which is the place to be during the most wonderful time of the year. However you got here today, whether it was an audio podcast platform like Apple, Spotify, or watching on YouTube, thank you. Subscribe and rate the show wherever you get your pods if you haven't yet. As always, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. And you can purchase some merch. Click the link in our bio on either of those pages or go to shop.bleav.com to purchase 3 different ones for you, covering our bases in purple, safer out in black, and catch you soon in white. All right, let's go through today's batting order. First, we'll be covering our bases. I'll share some callouts from the softball world. Then we'll head into today's interview with Michele Smith, one of softball's icons at the highest levels, and one of the names basically synonymous with the Women's College World Series at this point. I had a chance to talk with her the night before, hours before, first pitch was thrown here in Oklahoma City. So it should be great. Then we'll end things with the foul tip of the week, where we share tips to help us get better. All right, let's go. Covering our bases. BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code Bleav for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. And college softball season ends here at the Women's College World Series, but Rip It Sports is actually where you can get your gear to start the summer or anytime. My Ringer Turfs, they made it to OKC. They automatically are in my suitcase at this point, and they've been awesome all season long. And Rip It has so many different types of gear just for all parts of the game, not just footwear, but equipment, apparel, accessories, protective pieces, you name it. So they also have gear for lots of different sports. It's not just softball. This is for women and girls everywhere, volleyball, soccer, and just general training as well, which, as we know, that never stops. So the best part is their mission to elevate female athletic performance. They understand that women and girls deserve gear specifically tailored to our needs, fitting right, performing well, and meeting our unique standards. Even better news is Rip It is offering an exclusive 15% discount. Just use the code Jenna15 when you shop at ripit.com. That is JENNA15. This is your chance to experience the same quality gear that helps so many women and girls excel, especially and including some of those who are competing here at the Women's College World Series. They are super, and that's where I'm going to start in terms of what is going on right now in the softball world. Supers was crazy. There were 5 if necessary games. OU, OSU, and UCLA rolled through their supers, hosting Florida State, Arizona, and Georgia, respectively. All top 8 seeds won outside of number 10 Duke, who upset number 7 Missouri, and number 14 Alabama, who upset number 3 Tennessee. So now that those 8 teams were locked in for this competition, the greatest show on dirt, as they say, some surprises at the Women's College World Series since I've been here. So Oklahoma State going 2 and out. The 2 and Q was not what I had on my bingo card for the Cowgirls this season based on how they had performed all season long. Alabama beat Duke. They're the ACC champs, tournament and regular season, right? I wasn't necessarily anticipating that either. And then OU having to play an if necessary game to get to the champ series. We haven't seen that in a while from the Sooners. So I want to give shout outs to the 2 teams who were so close to making it to compete for a championship in that final series. Florida and their huge fight against OU in that if necessary game. Rothrock, just a freshman, and so impressive with how she was able to handle herself in the circle. So I think the future's bright in that regard, even if we see some careers come to an end, like a Skylar Wallace, for example. And then Stanford in the postseason, 5-1 in if necessary games. They lost that last one to Texas. Tegan Cavan was absolutely fantastic. Back-to-back shutouts against them. But Nigeri Kennedy just put the team on her back, and she was named the USA Softball National Player of the Year for a reason. Ends the season at the top of most of the big pitching categories in the nation. And I just have to give a shout out to those two squads for making it so far. Texas and OU then, the number 1 and the number 2 seeds in the Champ Series. The Red River rivalry runs through Oklahoma City. I cannot wait for this championship series, and it'll be the cherry on top of what has already been an outstanding Women's College World Series. But in terms of my time in Oklahoma City so far, so one of the cool parts is being able to see some Bleavers in person. So past guests and friends of the show, and just my friends in real life. It's been really nice to have those kind of reunions since everybody's spread out all throughout the country, which actually speaks to the growth of our sport anyway. But folks like Jessica Mendoza, Kat Osterman, Natasha Watley, Danielle Laurie, I got to interview them all on site actually with D1 softball as well. But just getting to say hello in person was the first time I met Kat in person, for example. So those types of things are just part of what makes it super fun. And actually, in addition to everything going on for college softball, there was a huge pro softball announcement as well leading up to the Champ Series for Athletes Unlimited. The AUSL, Athletes Unlimited Softball League, was announced. It is a new league coming in 2025 that is part of the Athletes Unlimited family. So what this is a traditional format. So there are going to start with at least 4 teams, 30-game schedule for those teams, and it will be city-based. They are going to tour 6 to 8 different cities in the first season. In 2025, they've committed to Chicago and Wichita already, but eventually they will be city-based as we see in typical professional leagues. Compensation starts from $45K to $75K for players, and when you factor in, they're essentially playing for less than 3 months in total for Athletes Unlimited in a given year. Not bad. Kat Osterman, who was the first AU champ ever for softball, Jessica Mendoza, who's actually been on the board of AU since the start, and Natasha Watley, who really connected with the athlete causes within AU through her foundation. All of them are advisors for this. And in addition to that, USA Softball is working hand in hand with AU on this initiative. The announcement came in a press conference actually at the USA Softball Hall of Fame Museum in the building where headquarters is. And I think that spoke a lot to just everybody as well in terms of what that partnership looks like. Another partnership with ESPN that will continue as well. They've committed to at least 18 games on linear TV for that coverage too. And I think the question that came up, I think Jessica Mendoza brought it up. It's a great one because it was at the Women's College World Series. We're watching these players, we're watching these seniors that we're so invested in, we're so impressed by. We want them to do well. We're rooting for them. Well, where will they be next week? When the World Series is over, when the college careers are over, what's next for them? And that's what this is trying to help address. So just a kudos to Sherry Kempf, another friend of the show, who also was there for this announcement because she leads softball within Athletes Unlimited, and then John Patricoff, who's co-founder and CEO as well, for continuing to invest in women's sports, let alone softball. The other thing in OKC, just for some fun too, so many food options between all the concessions that are in the stadium, outside the stadium, out in the outfield. There's just so many options. For me, I've been living on chocolate Dippin' Dots. I don't really necessarily eat Dippin' Dots any other time of year, but they've been there, and so I've had them quite a bit. As well as I did get a great experience with Shuckin' Bill's. So it is a corn on the cob food truck that's out past the outfield wall here in Oklahoma City. And it was absolutely delicious, totally fresh. They had plenty of different seasonings if you wanted to add that onto it. It was just delicious. Highly recommend if you ever make it out here to try it out, to see what it's all about, because it was great. So just a glimpse into all of this. We could go into much more detail, and I will have plenty more for you as well after the World Series wraps up. But to bring it home, we're at the peak right now for college softball, right? We know that. Recently, plenty of stuff that you can catch up on if you haven't yet. The D1 Softball Championship Series preview show, you can rewatch that. It's from the night before first pitch. Eric Lopez and Victor Anderson from In the Circle, and then myself, along with guests like Kat Osterman, actually, and Jamie Pinkerton, another head coach who has played against both teams, make an appearance. The NCAA live preview is going to be the day of the Champ Series before Game 1. It'll be with Amanda Lorenz and I. And then we'll also be doing our podcast. We got ready for the World Series last week, and we'll check in after the champion is crowned next week. So what's coming up? On-site coverage at the Women's College World Series continues. Paige Halstead, UCLA alum, has been with me again in our digital team after we worked together at Mary Nutter, and both of our alma maters were here, so that was a little extra fun, as well as Amanda's. Make sure to keep following everything there on our social channels at D1 Softball. And of course, a lot of content as well on d1softball.com from our team. It is amazing coverage, and you can almost get a sense of what it's like to actually be here, which is the goal. But someone who's right in the middle of all the action this year and every year is today's guest. So let's head into the interview. She's an ESPN analyst, two-time Olympic gold medalist, Japan League MVP and champion, and keynote speaker, Michele Smith. Smitty, I feel like I have to call you Smitty. I feel like, that just feels right in this moment.
Right. Exactly. I mean, when you have a name like Michele Smith, it's so common that Smitty just is better than Michele Smith. So there you go.
Well, what's funny is we did not cross over, but there was a Michele Smith at Stanford who graduated right before I came in, and we called her Smitty too.
There you go.
So yeah, whenever Mendoza calls you Smitty on air or whenever it is, it always makes me smile.
I love it.
Well, I could ask you 5 million questions, but I think I have to start with this. We're both in OKC right now. The craziness is about to start. So many great pitchers that are here. And obviously you're in the bucket when I think of great pitchers of all time. Player of the Year with Nigel Kennedy, Lexi Kilfoyle, who was a finalist, so many. Yep. How many scrise balls do you think we're going to see?
I think we're going to see a lot of scrise balls. I think we're going to see a lot of pitches that we're like, wait, what was that? Or there's going to be a lot of pitches that were like, wow, that was an amazing rise ball. It's that time of year that, I think you don't get to the Women's College World Series if you don't have a really good arm or two or three in the circle. So, and we have that unique mix this year that we have a Stanford with Nigel. I mean, they have a staff. I think most teams have a staff, have at least one or two. But then you have a Texas, it's legitimately got 4 or 5 good arms. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of these coaches use those arms.
Yes, it always is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, man. But I love the way that you break it down. I mean, just hearing from a pitching mind, right? Like that's what we want to hear when we're watching pitchers at this level performing. So I love the scrise balls. I think I heard one of the coaches reference like a backdoor screwball today, and it made me think of you as well, because I'm sure Smitty will talk about that on air if it comes to pass. So I'm excited to hear your analysis.
Thank you. Yeah, pitching, obviously, it's called fast pitch. So it's funny when people try to be like, oh, it's all about the offense this year and da-da-da. I'm like, no, it's still fast pitch. We still talk about our sport, even though we call it softball. Yes, it's softball, and there's many different types of softball to play. It is fast pitch softball because we're talking about how we deliver the pitch. And so it does start in the circle. And even when you look at Major League Baseball and the World Series, it comes down to typically the teams that win have dominating pitchers, and great pitching will always shut down great hitting. There's always going to be those 1 or 2 pitchers that are going to show up and be great, and then analyzing how they do it. Right. So there's many different ways that we can fool hitters, get them off their timing. And the pitchers that do that the best, the most maybe non-conventional, or the way that they haven't seen stuff all year long. So the most unique style of pitching they're typically the ones that win. And if you go back like over every year of the national championship, you can always describe each pitcher on how they did it. The Danielle Laurie, the Megan Kings, the blah, blah, blah. You go, the Pages for Oklahoma, Kaylani, they all do it a little bit differently, but the key is they're able to shut down really good hitters. And there's a couple ways you do that. It's through timing of when the pitch shows up, so velocity. It's through movement through the zone, and then it's ability to actually control the edges. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do it, but each pitcher maybe picks a little bit different path to get to that success rate. But it is interesting, as the analytics have gone up to help hitters be better, there's still ability for really great pitchers to be great pitchers.
I love that you made sure you had a shout out in there with some lefties as well, right, which also feels right. Yeah. I love it. I love it. But you're right. Actually, it's funny because today during the press conferences, Patrick Murphy mentioned like it's called fast pitch, and he was referring to his pitching staff with Caleb
Yeah.
Beaver, Jocelyn Brisky, and that's where it starts. He was literally talking about that exact concept. So of course it aligns with what we're talking about now.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too because when you look at your pitching and your defense, when that is on point, you never lose a game. In other words, you may not win the game. It might be 0-0 forever, but you never lose the game, right? If you don't allow
Mm.
your opponent to score, you can never lose. But
Yeah.
again, if you don't score, you may never win, but you will never lose. And so, really, championships are born out of your ability to limit your opponent. And so, if you have a great pitching staff and a great pitching mind that's calling those pitches, a great defense behind those, that great battery and that great pitching mind calling the pitches, you can do a lot of damage to your opponent by just simply not allowing them to put runs up on the board. And when you look at the dynasty that Oklahoma has created over the last 3 years, and they're three-peat here, going for a four-peat, I think a lot of people would say, "Wow, they put a lot of runs up on the board." I mean, as good as Ball was last year, and maybe the last 2 years, even though she was injured her freshman year, I still think it comes down to their offense. So it's interesting when you start to look at a pitcher's ability to limit an offense. To me, that's really how you create championships.
Yeah. That's why we do see, a lot of pitchers get that Player of the Year award
Yeah.
nationally. Even though I know a lot of people feel like we should have a separate one for player and pitcher,
Oh yeah, I do
there are
agree with
arguments.
that.
Yeah, I do too. I do too because they're both, there's so many great players out there and different types of roles. So, but I think I saw recently. I want to say Holly Rowe tweeted that when it comes to covering the World Series every year, you, Beth Mowins, Jessica Mendoza, and her are the potentially longest tenured group that has covered an event together consecutively. Was it 18 years? Did I hear that correctly?
This is either 17 or 18. Yeah, it's a long time that we've been together, and we're very proud of that. We're the team announcing the teams, and so I think a lot of times people don't understand the depth of what goes into putting this event on air, and the sheer number of people. Like when you talk about the 8 teams in Oklahoma City, the largest team is the ESPN team, and probably the most committed team to the number of hours that go into the Women's College World Series is the ESPN team. I mean, now granted, we have 2 broadcast crews, right? So you have Kevin and Amanda, and then our crew, but we have a lot of cameramen and women that work every game. We have a lot of people that work every game. And so that just shows the dedication and the fact they want to be here. Like they sign up. Like this is a bucket list for fans, but it's also for, the ESPN folks. They want to be at this event. That's how exciting it is. That's how much they love it. That's how competitive the women are. So I have to say I'm very, very proud of that aspect from the ESPN standpoint.
The hours, you're so right about the crew and the entire staff. It's actually insane how much goes into it. But even for you guys with different weather delays and, just schedules getting changed and late night sometimes games that are going on, I would imagine there are times where you have to feel a little bit delirious because there's so much going on at once.
100%. I mean, it is a lot, and people don't realize, like literally from the time you touch down in Oklahoma City to the time you depart, your day is packed. I mean, it is just packed with people and notes and information and production meetings and just learning about teams, connecting with SIDs, connecting with your own team, talking about the production. And some days it's one game and other days it's 2 games. And so just the sheer amount of information that goes into your brain. And then like today, the day prior to the start of the World Series, we're listening to every team. So it's 8 teams of all these athletes and coaches coming through, and all that stuff gets jammed in, and you're like, wait, which team was that? Wait, who said that? I mean, there's just so much information that you like trying to keep it organized and straight at times can be very difficult. But that's part of the job. That's what makes it so wonderful, is that it is challenging, and keeping it organized and being able to share a sport with the average fan that checks in is fun. I feel like that's our duty as broadcasters, is to reel people in, kind of like we're fishing, reel them in and keep them, keep them watching our sport.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I totally agree. By the way, you see people, you run into people, of course, that who love this game as well, who are here, and you're like, oh, how are you? And I'm like, I'm already sleep deprived somehow. We haven't even had our first pitch, and I've already, because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of stress we love, right? Like when we played, we liked a certain level of stress with the competition, and
100%.
you have that covering the big moments too. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Chaos,
But
right?
yeah, yeah.
We love it.
When you hear people call you, Jess, Beth, Holly, like the A team, how does that resonate with you guys?
So it's interesting because they do say that, and I don't know why they always say that. It's like, I mean, maybe it's because we're just so old and we've been around for so long, but we also have great groups of other announcers that I wouldn't call them the B or C or D team. I think it's just the way people. It's just an easy way to say, hey, Beth, Jess, Michele, and Holly. It's just like
yeah.
most known team. Maybe that's what it is. It's just like, or back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, the A team, with that TV show. I don't know. It was just like the group of people that just showed up and saved the day. We have a lot of other groups that show up and save the day. We have, we're very fortunate now. We have a lot of great announcers. We have a lot of great athletes that have transitioned from being a really good athlete on the field to a very good announcer and a very good journalism. I was pre-med, so I knew nothing about journalism or broadcasting when I first started doing this. In fact, my first coaching, and the only coaching I've ever got in my career, was say what you see. And I'm saying that in air quotes for people that are just listening. Say what you see. I'm like, wow, that's great. That's like a rise ball. Just spin it backwards. I mean, and then that's how you develop an Olympic rise ball. Spin it backwards. Okay, great. Say what you see. So when they say the A team, I think it's just a simple way of saying, hey, here's this group that typically works together. But we're very dedicated. I think that when people would look at the amount of time that we spend on the sport, the amount of dedication to really sharing great stories, really analyzing the game the way it deserves to be analyzed, and then also knowing from an intimate level, like from my perspective and Jess's perspective of having been in massively large moments on a softball field, I think that's where the depth comes out, where people are like, oh, you've pitched in the Olympics, you've hit in the Olympics, you've played pro ball in Japan, you've played the game at such a high level that you can get in the mind of the athlete, you know the mind of the coach and the decisions they're making, and so you can really dive in and delve into events that are happening in the current game to give insight. And I think that's really what it's about. You just threw a camera on a field, I don't know how many people would watch it, but when you make it, it's show business. When you make it a show, I think things come to life, and that's what captivates people.
Yeah. And you said it, the stories. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
You nailed it with that. That's the other piece too, is the fact that it's so easy to, gain the respect of the audience in the sense of you've been there, right? Like you've walked in the shoes of the athletes. I mean, the game's evolved a lot. Like we know that, but just the level of competition as well. But I also appreciate how you and ESPN overall, your crew and ESPN in general, has just grown the game in different ways. Like the Clearwater tournament, for example. Like my understanding is that you had a very large hand in that, and that's been a great thing for the sport.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, we were very fortunate. So a young producer back in the day, Megan Ranowitz, who played softball at Emory, was at ESPN and basically championed our sport to a lot of the men because it was a lot more male dominated, 20 years ago. And she basically was like, hey, this is a great sport. And if we show it, we can grow it. And so when you have someone championing something, it makes a big difference. So Meg Aronowitz from the executive side has really helped propel the sport forward. And then I think there's athletes like myself who've transitioned from being that athlete into, broadcasting and just communicating, and then also having community relationships and meeting the right people that want to be involved in the growth of a sport. So basically what I did is I felt like I was pretty good at captaining and putting people together. And to me, that's what business is, right? The most successful people find the best group of people at what they do, and they put them together and say, all right, let's figure this out because it's going to be epic. Right. And so, and I knew that Meg and ESPN was trying to have a pre-conference season tournament somewhere, and they couldn't figure it out either within the Disney realm. And I kept saying, look, I know people in Clearwater. I know people. If we marry the right people together, this will be an epic event. And so I think she had to run through protocol to figure out where it would not work before we figured out where it would work. And so we basically got Meg together with ESPN events. So Meg is in production, which is a completely different arm of ESPN than ESPN events. And so it was Meg in production, ESPN events, the city of Clearwater, Pinellas County, and a group of people, getting them together where everybody could say, okay, this is what we can bring to the table, and here's our opportunity to create this amazing event at the start of the season. So now we're bookending the season with the Clearwater ESPN Invitational, and then obviously the Women's College World Series, which is the NCAA championship. And I had at the time already had my charity event. It was a Michele Smith Pediatric Cancer Foundation event. And so any of the money that I was able to raise from the event, we donated to the Pediatric Cancer Foundation. And we still give from the Clearwater event through my associates scholarships back, and just make a difference within the community. So that was kind of what was important to me. And so we still continue to do that, but you put all of this together, and it basically became, in the second weekend of the season, a really, really cool event that I think people look forward to going to. And I would say it's a bucket list event, just like the Women's College World Series is. So it's pretty cool when you get the right group of people together.
I went to Clearwater for the first time this season, and it was a blast because it is exactly what you said. It's a bookend. Multiple teams who were there in the Women's College World Series this week.
Yeah.
And it's just nothing like it.
Well, this year was unfortunate because of El Nino and the amount of rain that we have, which usually never happens in February in Florida. So that was the anomaly. But come back next year. I promise it'll be better.
Yes, I will be there. Yes. No, but I think it's just such a great example of the investment, like the show it to grow it piece that you're talking about, like how that actually works. Because some of these things are easy to say, right? But it's like, how can we actually do that? And I just think it's important what you all have done in that regard.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, that's always kind of been my mantra, is that, a lot of people are about stats and numbers and all this stuff. And I've always said, like, hopefully my legacy is not my 2 Olympic gold medals or my statistics or how many, perfect games or no hitters I've thrown or how many championships I won in the Pro League in Japan. Hopefully it's like, wow, Michele helped create this event. Wow, Michele helped, these scholarships, those sorts of things. Because to me, those are perpetual. Records are always meant to be broken in sports. So I hope there are always going to be bigger and better athletes that are coming along. But, it's the stuff that you do off the field, those legacies that you continue to leave, those endowments and those different things. To me, that's the stuff that's perpetual, and it makes a difference to somebody who then can make a difference to someone who can then make a difference. And so to me, I feel like those are the things that you want to leave behind in life.
Well, and I will say, just when you speak to people within the softball community, that is one of the things that I feel like is just associated with you in a general sense, is how much you've given back. And I've actually learned more and more over the years just how much that you've done in that regard. So from that perspective, I want to say thank you for what you've done for the sport.
Oh, you know what? I feel very blessed, and I was given a lot of gifts. So, to whom much is given, much is expected. And, I love to be able to share where I can, because to me, those are the most important things, in life. And whether or not it's a Chinese or a Japanese proverb or a biblical, saying, I just feel like that when you give, you get, and when you make a difference to people, it's, to me, that's the best feeling in the world. And that's why, I think a lot of us, that's why we play team sports. Like, we want that connection with other human beings, and when you can make a difference together, I think those are the things that are fulfilling in life.
When you said it, we know you so well from that impact internationally, with the Olympics, in Japan with the league, but even just seeing your alma mater, Oklahoma State, and the way that program has grown, and they're here, again, this
Again,
week for the Women's College World Series. How has that been to witness?
it's been really fun. I have to say, Kenny Gajewski, I think, is just a wonderful human being. And it was interesting when they were looking for a new coach. What was that, 9 years ago? I mean, they reached out to me, and they asked me if I was interested, and I was like, honored, but no, thank you. And so I helped them. Who's the right person? Who's the right person for the job? And obviously, I think they tried to hire a female coach, but my thing as an alumni was, hire the right person who's going to be embedded and stay and grow the program, not someone who's going to use it as a stepping stone to then leapfrog somewhere else, And so for me, as I was helping at the time, Coach Holder, Mike Holder, who was the AD, he used to be the golf coach at Oklahoma State, which is why we call him Coach Holder. Amazing man. He and I would talk a lot, and I just was like, look, you have to meet Kenny Gajewski. I'm like, this guy is awesome, and the reason I knew Kenny is because at the time he was coaching at Florida, and he would come help me at my holiday camp in Clearwater, Florida. So I would put on this holiday camp in between Christmas and New Year's, and I mean, college coaches are busy and crazy, but he still would make the time to come down, work my camp. And I just saw the way the kids loved him, and just how genuine he was. And he was from Oklahoma, and his wife, at the time, was from Oklahoma. So I just knew that. And he told me how much he really, really wanted the job. And anyway, I was like, this is the right person for the job. And so, long story short, look at what he has done. I mean, and he's done that with Patty Gasso and that amazing, dynasty that she's built down the road. And a lot of times that's hard. It's hard to build something when you have a juggernaut right down the road from you. So he's just been incredible. I think there's many more amazing years to come for Kenny Gajewski and Oklahoma State University. And I just couldn't be more proud of the state of Oklahoma. I've been very good friends with Patty Gasso and everything that she's done at Oklahoma. Obviously, I'm alum at Oklahoma State, and I'm very proud of that program and supportive of Kenny Gajewski. But I'm very supportive of the state of Oklahoma, USA Softball, the Hall of Fame, and now it's Devon Park. The commitment of a really massive Fortune 500 company that's going to come in and invest in our sport, the community to go through tax bonds to invest in women and in our sport. And those are the things that matter. If you look at the sport of softball, we're the only sport that can't play in a men's facility, right? When you look at the professional level, we're the only sport, right? We don't really fit into a men's professional baseball stadium because we're 2/3 of the size of them. Basketball, soccer, I mean, any other sport women play, tennis, golf, track and field, swimming, you name it, all of it, they can play in men's facilities. We cannot. And part of the thing that's held us back at the elite level is that we don't have really good, massive community stadiums. Oklahoma City has really stepped up and built a stadium. Now, granted, could we be better in a lot of different places? Absolutely. But this is one community that has stepped up and made a difference and invested in our sport. Our sport needs to do that more. We put a lot of head and bed tax into cities, counties, and states. And I used to own a small hotel, so I understand bed tax revenue and how that relates to sports tourism. And so we need to do a better job in the sport of softball of getting that money back reinvested into the sport of softball by building community softball stadiums, because once we have professional stadiums, we'll be able to have a professional league. And so I know I'm preaching to the choir probably a lot, because a lot of people listening to this are already softball fans, but it's a big part. So my hope is that everybody listening to this, whatever business that you are in, that we continue to talk about, we need community stadiums. Title IX's did a great job at the educational institutional level, and we've built some great stadiums, but now we need communities to start stepping forward, and all the money, the billions of dollars that the sport of softball invests into local tourism, we need that money, that tax money, to now flow back into softball stadiums for communities so that our sport can continue to grow.
I mean, this makes
Sorry.
me think of.
I apologize. That was really long-winded.
No, don't apologize. This is the good stuff. You know what I mean? And this reminds me of everyone I've talked to that's ever played professionally in Japan. Obviously, you know better than pretty much anyone what that experience is like, but that's what they talk about in terms of corporate investment too. So some of the things you're mentioning, it just feels like it aligns there. And I know you spent so much time there. You even speak the language a little bit, right?
Nihongo wakarimasu. Matta nihongo wakarimasu. So yes, I still remember my Japanese. So I've forgotten a little bit of it, but yeah, I still, it's embedded. I spent so much time over there.
That's awesome.
I loved it. Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, the Japan League is, I wish we had this same sort of support and over here in the US. And when I was over there, I would try to get my Olympic teammates. I'd try to get everybody. I'm like, you got to come over here. This is the most amazing league, opportunity to play ball almost year round. And people looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, you're going half a world away. I was like, you get to play softball, like 9 months out of the year. It's like a bonus. And so now that, softball's been in and out of the Olympics, I think a lot of these women are like, okay, where are my opportunities? And they're like, oh, my opportunities are in Japan. So now they are flying half of, world away to play softball. It's a little bit easier now because you can FaceTime with people. You don't feel like you're as far away than when I was over there. But, they do a very good job. And that's part of the reason why they've won the last 2 Olympic gold medals. I mean, they are a very committed country, and they're very committed to the diamond sports, both baseball and softball, and they should be commended for that. But yeah, we have some things that we could learn from them, and I'm sure that we will, continue to. But yeah, that was a blessing. I loved playing in Japan. At first, I thought I was only going for 1 year, and it turned into 16 years. So 16 years of, learning how to live in the culture. It was enlightening, and it helped me. It helped me grow into the person that I am today, and I'm very blessed and grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, you mentioned some Japanese proverbs that you live by earlier too. I mean, I'm sure it all sinks in, right? It's a ripple effect.
Oh, trust me. My very first year, I had a Japanese executive from our company tell me, they're like, Michele, there is a Japanese proverb that a nail that sticks out is a nail that gets hammered down. In other words, like, conformity is part of the Japanese culture. And I was like, no. I was like, no, you did not bring me over here to conform. I was like, you brought me over here to pitch with my big hair and my, energy. And I was like, I respect your culture. And I will take my shoes off when I walk into houses, and I will bow, and I will greet, and I will do everything that the amazing Japanese culture brings to me, and I will learn from it. But I will not be the nail that gets hammered down. I am going to stick out, so don't stub your toe on me. Trust me, that was a learning experience for both our company and for me. But all seriousness aside, it was a learning experience. I helped make them better softball players. They helped me be a better person. They helped me learn to look outward instead of inward. In the US, we're always like, this affected me, this happened to me. We look inward. In Japan, they're a country the size of California with half the population of the US. So it'd be like everybody west of the Mississippi moving into California. They're very densely populated. So you learn very quickly how your actions affect other people. and that you're cognizant of that, you're aware of that, you're making sure that you're not imposing on other people. And that's really not the American way. The American way is like, hey, it's all about me. Look at me, me, selfie me, and my reel, and we're very inward focused
Yeah.
versus the Japanese culture is more outward and team. And so it taught me a lot about being a good human being and the legacy I'm going to leave behind, and how do I be a good teammate, and all the things in life that I look back now and I'm like, wow, I'm so fortunate that I was able to go to Japan and learn all this, because I would have never learned it if I just would have stayed, here in the US. I wouldn't have understood what a country of, half of the population of the US, what they go through, what they think, what they read. So it's very interesting when you live outside of our own country, the lessons that you learn in life.
Yeah, perspective, definitely. Definitely. But you mentioned, on a lighter note, you mentioned your hair. And I
Yeah.
always think of your classic photos, right, of you with the hair down, with the visor. And I've
Yeah.
always wondered, like, was that comfortable to wear your hair down? Like, how did that work?
Okay, so that's a great question. But yes, it was comfortable, and it was a necessity, because every time I would try to put it up, well, first off, it wouldn't stay in a scrunchie. Back in the day, we had
Mm.
those really loose scrunchies, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I have to twist it and turn it like 8 times, and then it still pops out because I have so much hair. And then I'm pitching, and I'm like, And so basically, I started wearing a visor, and the visor was kind of like a headband.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so then I would just kind of tuck my hair in the sides of the visor a little bit. I could never get my hair to stay up. And then, because I hit, even if I did get it up, then I'm like, I would have, my batting gloves would have goop on them and whatever. And then I'd have stuff in my hair. I'm like, this is awful. I was like, I'm just wearing my hair down. And I was like, as long as I'm going forward, my hair's going backward, we're all good. Every once in a while I would turn and my hair would fly in front of my eyes and I'd be like, I can't see anything. But no, I'm telling you, it was crazy. And people would say that all the time. I'd play with my hair down. And then after the game was over, I'd take a shower and I'd put it in a bun. And they're like, you're the complete opposite. They're like, your hair should be in a bun when you're playing and your hair should be down after. I'm like, listen, this is it. This is as good as it gets. This is how I can figure it out. I got this big hair. It's uncontrollable. And I would joke about it. I would be like, I control my pitches better than I can control my hair. So there you go.
There you go. Exactly. I mean, you're the nail that's sticking out. You can't hammer it in. We already covered that.
100%. Right? Exactly.
Oh man, I love that. I love when people just are themselves, in any way. It could be the smallest thing. Like, it could be your hair, it could be the approach to your at bat, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just when people are themselves, like, that's when they're at their best. And I just love seeing little things like that.
That's great.
Well, my last question before we wrap up is, just have to ask you about being in not only the Olympics and competing at that level, but in the first Olympics that included softball. Obviously, it's an Olympic year. We're disappointed we're not in Paris 2024. We're excited for LA 2028, and hopefully Brisbane 2032 after that as well. But just the experience of getting to do that.
Yeah. It's amazing, for our sport. The Olympics, a lot of people view the Olympics as the pinnacle of sport. And so when your sport is in the pinnacle of sport, as an athlete, you rise up. You think, wow, when you're walking into opening ceremonies with, Michael Jordan at the time, the fastest, sprinter, or Johnson, excuse me, Michael Johnson, and then the Michael Jordans, and every famous athlete, you name them, they're in opening ceremonies with you, and you're a part of Team USA. So it's not just you're on the softball team, you are a part of Team USA. I mean, it elevates everything. And so yeah, our sport needs that, especially because we've struggled a little bit at the professional level here in the US. So playing in the Olympics was, such an honor. It's a long 4 years in between those games, that you give up a lot for, that you sacrifice a lot for. If you would have asked me when I was 25 years old what I was going to be doing in my 30s, I would have said, I am going to be a surgeon. I'm going to be a thoracic surgeon. I'm going to be a doctor, and I am going to be helping people and saving lives. And that all changed in 1 year in Japan when I went over there thinking I'm going to go to Japan for 1 year, earn a little money, and then, have some money to go to medical school so I won't be a starving student. And that 1 year, we became a full medal sport in the Olympics in 1996. And so this was 1993, and it changed my life. And for a very long time, I had a hard time kind of accepting, like, oh man, I felt selfish. I'm like, I'm not going to school where I could help people to play a sport. And I met with Dr. Singer, who was the team doctor at the University of Oregon, which is where I had coached for 2 years before I went to Japan. And Dr. Singer looked at me and he said, Michele, he's like, just because you don't have a scalpel in your hand, just because it's a softball instead of a scalpel, he said, you're still helping people. He's like, look at all the little girls that you're inspiring. And the second he said that, it was like, bing, it's like I stood up straight and I was like, oh, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I was happy, and I just kind of like after that lunch, I kind of walked off like I'm where I'm supposed to be. But I needed that reassurance. And so it made me feel good about everything I was doing. And so from Atlanta, from the 96 Olympics, I springboarded into the 2000 Olympics and then continued to play in Japan and, just got to meet a lot of young girls and young boys because boys fast pitch softball is very popular in Japan. So, it really was a blessing. And so even though it wasn't a scalpel in my hand, it was a softball in my hand, I was still making a difference. But really the Olympics helped facilitate that. And, my hope is that we have many other, U.S. Olympians as well as Olympians around the world that can play our sport of softball and can go on to inspire the next generation, and that we can continue to, grow our sport, which I think we're doing. I think we're doing a good job. We've been a little bit slow in some areas. I think that's again why we need the community support. But it really was a blessing. The Olympics was, one of the highlights of my career for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I can only imagine, of course, that would be the case, right? But the ties that it has to college softball, too, I think there's no doubt that the fact that softball got in the Olympics absolutely helped the growth of college softball because young girls were able to dream big. And there's just so many factors that go into that kind of visibility. So that's why when I think about people like you and Jess, right, people who have worn USA, but who are so involved in the college game now, too, in the growth, like I love to see those ties of giving back and paying it forward, right? It's kind of a combination of both.
Yeah, for sure. And I think any like great Olympian, if you look at what they're doing now, they don't worry about their numbers or, any of those statistics. It's really about how you're able to pay it forward, how you're able to make a difference, inspire the next generation that then inspires the next generation. And, we now have a young generation of girls that grow up never knowing that there was a time when women didn't play sports, weren't allowed to play sports, or there was no funding for women to play sports, So we're making progress. We now have moms who played sports whose daughters are now playing sports. And, it wasn't that long ago that, my mother and my grandmother didn't play sports because there weren't opportunities for them. And now our generation of moms sitting in the stands at the Women's College World Series have played college softball, and now their daughters are playing college softball in the Women's College World Series. That's pretty cool, so we're finally there, and hopefully it just continues to grow.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I cannot agree more. I could also keep talking to you forever. I could talk to you all week about all of this. And we'll be talking about all of this all week anyway, in various forms. But I will wrap up with you now with a game that I play with everybody. It's really quick. It's called Safe or Out. Okay. Basically, I'll bring up a topic, and if you like it or you agree with it, you call it safe. If not, you call it out.
Okay.
So you're the umpire, basically.
All right.
So the first one is having the K zone on TV for softball. Safe or out?
Ooh, safe. I like it. I mean, it helps hold umpires accountable for their strike zone. It helps give perspective to the fans, as long as it is accurately, put in there, which supposedly it is. So there you go.
Yeah, well, because that's kind of like my follow-up is, we see it with baseball, of course. But it's a different trajectory, right. Different release point and things. So just making sure, to your point, it's like we can't play in the same facilities. Well, it's a different game a little bit.
Right. So, and then, if you have a 5'2" slapper and a 6'2" power hitter, like, is it adjusting?
Right. Exactly. Okay. That was the first one. Second one is conference realignment.
Oh,
safe or out?
Out. I don't like it. I don't know. Maybe I'm the typical human that doesn't like change, but I don't know. The Pac-12 going away just doesn't seem right. Teams in California in the Big Ten. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just very, very bizarre to me. Um, I think even a lot of the change in NIL and paying athletes and all that, it's like hard to wrap my head around that. I thought your payment used to be your education, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I understand. Yeah. It's changed a lot even since I played,
yeah,
and then to
for
think
sure.
about the history just overall, they're definitely dealing with a lot more and a lot different stuff
Yeah,
than we were at the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Okay, last one is bat flips. Safe or out?
Oh, safe. You got to play with emotion. Come on. I mean, I was like, I'd strike people out and be like a hair fly and be like, yeah. So, I mean, if pitchers can celebrate, and I love Nyjah Kennedy when she rips her face mask off and stomps down. I'm like, you go, girl, you stomp, stomp, stomp. And when I see the battery or the pitchers like, that's to me that's the same as boop. You hit a dinger, you get to flip your bat. So as long as you're not throwing it at anyone, as
Yeah,
long as
yeah,
as long as the bat's not hitting anyone, then I don't have a problem with it. I don't think positive emotion on a celebration to me is always a great thing. People love to see that. They love to see that it's natural, and I think that's a good thing.
yeah. Well, and obviously, a few years back was a huge topic with Sam Shao and your alma
Yeah,
mater as well,
yeah,
especially at
yeah.
the Women's College World Series.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good for
Yeah,
her. I mean, she stood out. She wasn't afraid to take that risk, and a lot of again, be the nail that sticks out. Don't it's she wasn't all about conformity. Like, oh, let me lay my bat down after I just hit this big home run. No, I get it. I mean, it's emotion, and people want to see emotion, so I love it. As long as the only thing I will say to that, like the little tangent off this, would be as long as you're not rubbing it in your opponent's face. And I think when it's genuine and you hit it and then the bat kind of goes, I don't have a problem with it. Now, if you hit it and you walk 5 feet down the baseline and then you flip it, maybe at your opponent's dugout, that might be a little like in your face. I don't really,
yeah,
I think that's premeditated. I don't like that. If it's just natural off the cuff, a celebration of a great moment, I don't have a problem with that.
yeah. And you're right. Pitchers do celebrate too. I think I saw. I guess I'll call it a ball flip, like making a great catch right back at them and just kind of flipping it,
Oh,
afterwards, flipping it in the air.
there you go.
Everybody
Exactly.
has their thing.
Yeah, well, even the infield, right? When we throw it around the horn, that's kind of a
Yes.
celebration of, all right, we got you out.
I was kind of thinking about that the other day, actually, watching Super Regionals. I was like, is that kind of a flex, like to throw it around like that after, and it kind of is. We're just
You
used to
got
it,
you.
but yeah. Well, thank you again. Smitty again feels right to say more so than Michelle. But thank you for joining, especially while we're in OKC and there's all this craziness going on. But I know we're probably two of the people who are most excited about all that's to come for this World Series. So
No,
I appreciate you coming.
no, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's really cool to chat with just one of the longest standing influencers in our sport. What she's done on every level and what she's doing right now at the Women's College World Series is just nothing short of fantastic. So with that, let's transition to the foul tip of the week. This week's foul tip is about belief. In all the games, all the press conferences, pretty much all the conversations I've had with players, with coaches, with even fans and families associated with teams, this has been a theme across the board. All 8 teams at the World Series had to have an insane amount of belief to get here. So when you look at what does that actually look like with the teams, how does that relate to outcomes? Well, if you look at Duke, they'd never been to the World Series before. First appearance in program history. They played supers on the road, and just everything that Marissa Young has been through with her family, like we talked about in our last episode with her when we had her on. Just so impressive what she's been able to do. I don't know if you look back at when everything went down with her husband initially last year during supers, and you think that this is what you can accomplish this year. But they believed. She believed. Oklahoma State, the top 2 teams in the national rankings are in their conference. Texas and OU, but they took the series from both of them in the regular season. Got a top 5 seed themselves to the Women's College World Series. They had to believe to do that. Alabama was 9th in the SEC. They had a below 500 record, but they upset Tennessee in supers. Didn't matter that they lost the series earlier in the year, and they go back-to-back at the Women's College World Series. UCLA, worst loss in program history opening weekend. Then they win the Pac-12 regular season and the tournament, make their 32nd Women's College World Series appearance after being knocked out in regionals at home last year. Bleav, battling through injuries as well. Stanford, never done back-to-back World Series appearances before. They did it. They won 5 elimination games in the NCAA tournament, plus the revenge win over UCLA at the World Series after they got swept in the regular season. Bleav. Florida, they also were at the bottom of the polls at the start of the season. Then they won the SEC tournament, made it to the World Series once again. It took the first game versus back-to-back champs OU in the semis. Bleav, right? OU didn't win the Big 12 regular season. Shocking, right? But they were tournament champions. They lost that first game to Florida in the semis at the World Series. Down in game 2, they come back, they walk it off in the 8th to make it to the championship series. It never stopped that they thought they could do it. Texas, they weren't picked to win their conference, but they took the Big 12 regular season, and they shut out Stanford twice at the World Series with and against the best pitcher in the country, right? With Nigel Kennedy in the circle. And they've only been to the championship series one other time. That was in 2022, so some of the same girls. But hey, they're back at it again. So to do anything, especially for the first time, you just have to believe you can do it first. And you have to realize also that nothing is guaranteed, though. Society does tend to tell us that if you work hard, you'll meet your goals. It's not that simple. It's actually not always true. But if you work hard, you do give yourself a hell of a lot better chance to meet those goals. And that's what they all did. And it's what we can do too. So that's it. Bleav. See what I did there? That's the foul tip of the week. You've been listening to Bleav in Softball, part of Bleav Network and presented by Bet Online. The show is available anywhere you get your podcasts, wherever you listen, including Bleav.com and YouTube too. Subscribe to the show, rate the show, and if you liked it, write a review. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. You can reach out to me on Twitter personally at Jenna Becerra01 or Instagram at Jenna Becerra as well. Thank you for tuning in and catch you soon.